Round 2 of polio vaccinations to include Highlands provinces. Faster internet speeds for PNG by February 2019. And Madang's Beon jail holding double its capacity.
This is National EMTV News with Helen Sayer.
Good evening and thanks for joining us for Thursday's news. The Health Department has announced that the second round of polio vaccination program will now include all Highlands provinces. This comes following a third reported polio case from Enga. While Eastern Highlands, Morobe and Madang provinces will start their second round of polio vaccination, the other 5 Highlands provinces will begin their first round.
Health Minister Se Pukatemu says following the third reported polio case in Enga province, the vaccination campaign will now be held in 9 provinces. This will see Enga, Chimbu, Southern Highlands, Western Highlands, Chiwaka and Hela in the first round of polio vaccination from August 27 to September 9.
It's good to know that Enga case is same as the little child, 6-year-old child from Eastern Highlands, and it's from the same settlement. So it basically means that there's no other type of polio outbreaks everywhere, but it's the same source. And so from our point of view, we are able to say that we can contain the outbreak quite successfully.
Minister Temu says the first round of polio vaccination was a successful campaign that reached over 299,000 children in Eastern Highlands, Morobe and Madang province.
We actually went past the 100,000 that I announced, and in Morobe, 126,312 children were vaccinated as a response. So that's indication of first the leadership that Morobe has and the support, the technical support that we have given, but also demonstrates that our basic, what I now term infrastructure, is still intact. And so all it required is the leadership that we had to provide at this level, and then providing the technical support through our partners and making the vaccines available on a timely basis.
The World Health Organization says currently they are actively investigating 55 suspected cases.
The World Health Organization, WHO, we are from a commitment to the government of Papua New Guinea in response is polio response. What do we say here is just good start to reach our children. The next step is to sustain, even suppress what we record here today.
And while over 600,000 doses of oral polio vaccines were procured in July by UNICEF, for the first round an additional 1 million doses were brought in this week. Meanwhile, Minister Temu also confirmed that 2 million kina of the allocated 6 million kina for the polio outbreak response has already been released by the government. Stanley Ove Jr., National EMTV News.
Meanwhile, the Health Department has announced a nationwide polio vaccination campaign is planned for the 3rd and 4th round of the vaccination campaign. This is set to be held in September and October, aiming to target more than 1 million children under the age of 5. UNICEF has also announced that they are working on procuring an additional 3.2 million doses of oral polio vaccines for the nationwide vaccination. Faster internet speed.
Our own belief is that during the 3rd phase, and I think the technical advisors agreed that we will have to go nationwide for the 3rd round, because we don't want any child to miss out. And so our message is we are ready to deliver the vaccine, and we are appealing to my colleagues, the leaders on the ground, the governors and open members, to also continue to support the team on the ground in every province or every district. DSIP has been released to every member of parliament, 1 million, and I'm appealing to my colleague MPs to also at least give 100,000 or 50,000 in each of the districts for vaccination programs. Yesterday,
Faster internet speed is expected in the country before February 2019. State Enterprise Minister William Duma says this infrastructure will improve high-speed broadband and connectivity for all citizens. Minister Duma said this while visiting the Coral Sea Cable landing site today in Port Moresby.
The current submarine cable carries a capacity of 800 megabytes per second. However, once the construction of the landing site is completed, it is expected to increase to 100,000 Mbps. This will be a state-of-the-art cable system where internet speed and connectivity will be improved, beginning with major cities and towns in the country. Minister Duma says the government is confident to cut high internet charges currently faced by users.
With the help of the Australian government as well as the Chinese government, we think that we are about to see what will actually change and revolutionize the way we have been communicating with the rest of the world and the way we have been doing business within Papua New Guinea.
The shores of Kila Barracks will be the landing site for the Coral Sea Cable, which runs from Australia through Papua New Guinea and to Guam. Minister Duma says the government is embarking on a wider scale to extend the cable to all provinces. However, it will take time but is hoped to be completed before 2019.
This is one of those projects that the Australian government has again agreed to help us. And as we all know, it will just simply improve the way we are communicating with the rest of the world.
Huawei PNG will be the leading contractor with relevant funding from Australian government and monitoring by state entity PNG Datacom Limited. The first phase of this project will be from Port Moresby to Madang via Alatau, Popondetta and Lae.
We are looking at least for now and between now and 2019 a reduction of at least 20% of the pricing. If we get the domestic cable before 2019 operational, then we should be able to see some reduction in pricing by at least 20%, and then it will continue to drop at least a rate of 20% year by year onwards. I think that's what we are looking at.
Jack Lapave Jr., National EMTV News.
Over 500 people in Irupara village in the Rigo district have registered for their national identification cards. The exercise is part of the Office of Civil Registry's mobile registration program in the Central Province. Of the 500 plus people who registered, 300 were adults and registered for NID cards, while the remaining 200 were below 18 years and applied for birth certificates. Central NID Office Coordinator William Damai said NID officers were spread across inland central villages and will continue the exercises into September. This is one way the Civil Registry is using to reach out to people in remote areas. You're watching National EMTV News. We continue with today's other stories after this short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Southern Highlands Governor William Powie has welcomed the court decision and retaining his seat. Governor Powie says all infrastructures destroyed in the recent violence and unrest must now be rebuilt and services restored. A major task is to establish law and order by supporting police and other enforcement agencies so the rule of law is restored. A major reconciliation ceremony is expected after the Provincial Assembly meets next week.
48 hours after the Waigani National Court reinstated sitting Governor William Powie, he made a bold statement to rebuild the province. Governor Powie says the courts have spoken and leaders and the people must work together to restore order and services disrupted after the 2017 national election and the recent unrest in Mendi town.
I am calling on partners like Oil Search, Action Mobile. I am calling on donors, NGOs, and I'm calling on the people of Southern Highlands to rally behind the Southern Highlands provincial government for a grand call of rebuilding the Southern Highlands province from where we have come out of.
Top of the agenda during the restoration period is to improve policing and other law and justice sector services in Southern Highlands. Governor Powie also admitted that for nearly 20 months, no projects or services were delivered. He urged the national government and government agencies to release funding belonging to the province for work to begin.
For us not to have implemented one project in our 280 million budget appropriation for this year is a major setback for my people. Waigani must respond to this. I need to build a courthouse. I need to build police barracks. I need to get the agriculture partnership program with the Israeli companies. I need to empower my people.
The Southern Highlands Provincial Assembly is expected to reconvene next week to announce the next step the province will take. A reconciliation ceremony between the 5 districts of Southern Highlands, Hela Province and management of New Guinea will also be staged.
And these two broad agendas of the provincial government, one rebuilding exercise that will entail empowering of people, getting the law and justice sector established in Southern Highlands, and also the reconciliation process that this Southern Highlands provincial government under my leadership will embark to fix and rebuild our province.
Jack Lapave Jr., National EMTV News.
Meanwhile, petitioner Joseph Koval has accepted the decision by the Waigani National Court. Mr. Koval says he won't be challenging the matter any further. However, candidate Bernard Peter will be pursuing the matter in regard to the decision made under the special circumstance.
I got nothing very much more, but I just want to thank the supporters only. Court has taken its course, but we have not exhausted all of them yet. But I will still have to look for another room. So anyways, only loopholes still pending. I still have to sue and do the last part of my EP 78, which was dismissed.
I can say that they have erred in here. Section 175 is still in limbo. What was cleared was on technicalities. So we are putting things together and we will look at other alternatives. And we still have room to go.
The Minister for Justice and Attorney General David Stephen yesterday said the government is focused on improving the country's judiciary system. This includes pay for village court clerks and magistrates, building infrastructure and providing trainings for the village court magistrates and mediators. The judiciary in PNG has also been a beneficiary of the support given by the Australian government.
The upgrade of the village court system in PNG was one of the areas addressed yesterday by the Minister for Justice and Attorney General David Stephen at the National Law and Order Summit at the Leh International Hotel. Minister Stephen said the village court system is an essential part of PNG's formal court system and the government is focusing on improving it.
Remarkable intervention of the current government is to place the village courts and the officials on the payroll, just like the village councillors, the ward members. And that's in recognizing the important work that they do, the frontline. They're the frontline agencies of the government and judiciary in particular.
Village courts are established under the Village Courts Act 1989 and the Village Court Regulations 1973. Over 7 million people living in PNG have access to a village court, which have the jurisdiction to settle local disputes and deal with minor crimes using customary laws. The Australian government, through its partnership program with PNG, has supported in funding trainings for village court magistrates and mediators. According to the Chief Secretary, Isaac Lupari, the government has committed 50 billion kina from 2013 to 2017 to the law and justice sector. Meanwhile, the village court in PNG currently needs new building infrastructure to accommodate village court hearings.
We now have a standard in terms of a standard design, and I thank the Chief Justice for taking leadership in this area. We have a model village court structure that we are now trying to build in a village called Boera Village in Central Province, and I'm waiting for the Chief Justice to deliver that, and then we will adopt that, and then we can standardize the rollout.
Julie Badui Owa, National EMTV News, Leh.
Madang's Beon Correctional Facility is overcrowded due to the increasing number of inmates. Beon CS Commander Chief Inspector Andrew Pollis says the holding capacity of Beon is 200 inmates, but as of last week, they're accommodating 444. This number covers both prisoners and remandees.
This is Madang's Beon Correctional Facility. It has a holding capacity of 200 inmates, comprising both men and women. However, currently Beon is accommodating twice its holding capacity. Beon is also accommodating remandees from the condemned Jomba police station cell. This is also contributing to the overcrowding.
Yes, overcrowding is one of the main problem that I'm facing now with my officers, but we are trying to manage.
For now, CS officers are doing what they can to accommodate the increasing number of inmates by putting some of the remandees from the condemned Jomba police station cell in the minimum security unit.
But we are trying to manage that and, put them into, classify them and move some of them down to the minimum security unit. So we have the minimum security unit as each one of the low risk. That's where low risk prisoners are kept. So we classify them straight after the court, which have sentenced those 80, 88, 87, I think, of them. We have a classification meeting and move some of the prisoners out from the main compound to the minimum security unit.
With the increasing number of remandees at Beon, there is another problem. Madang province has only one magistrate to deal with the increasing number of court cases. Senior Provincial Magistrate Josephine Kilage confirmed this, saying Madang is in a critical situation. Senior Provincial Magistrate Josephine Kilage says there should be 4 magistrates stationed in town, while 1 should be stationed in Bogia, 1 in Karkar Island and 1 in Ramu, including the Senior Provincial Magistrate. There should be 8 magistrates in the province, but currently Madang is down to 1. Martha Louise, National EMTV News, Madang.
The Yumi Stand Up Strong team is a group of community-based organizations in PNG working with the Queensland University of Technology. They're doing outreach programs to address sorcery accusation-related violence in communities in Papua New Guinea. They have produced 41 digital stories which capture personal experiences of the causes, impacts and solutions to sorcery-related violence. They came together recently for a workshop in Goroka to understand how the audio-visual materials they developed could reach people and have an impact among communities. To date, they have done 40 screenings during discussions after the screening, a community leader asked the team to return for a bigger screening. The Yumi Stand Up Strong initiative is supported by the Papua New Guinea-Australia Partnership under the Pacific Women Shaping Pacific Development Program and implemented by Queensland University of Technology and the University of Goroka. 96 families in remote CR village of Namatanai district in New Ireland will now light up their homes following the recent distribution of solar kits. A small but very significant event was held as the families received their solar kits consisting of light bulbs, a flashlight, radio and solar panels. The distribution covered a catchment of 7 wards consisting of 20 communities. This is the 3rd set of solar kits distributed by the Namatanai District Administration. Namatanai MP Walter Schnobelt was present to witness the occasion. Day 2 of the Law and Order Summit in Lae has again highlighted long-standing problems in Papua New Guinea's prison system. While the Correctional Service Commissioner Michael Waipo presented solutions to problems, the implementations of the solutions are still a long way off from being resolved. Overcrowding in the prisons remain one of the biggest concerns for the Correctional Service and one of the biggest contributors for ongoing prison escapes.
As part of the law and justice system, the correctional service is like a gauge for society itself. The number of convictions and the kinds of offenders it receives indicates how communities are functioning. Its biggest roles of correction and rehabilitation are perhaps the most neglected. This is largely due to funding shortages, contributing to the service's inability to recruit skilled people and run rehabilitation programs.
Basically, priority interventions for reform and modernization in corrections is a must.
Today at the summit, CS Commissioner Michael Waipo repeated the problems the service faces, among them overcrowding. In Buimo Prison in Lae, the prison cells built for 450 are holding up to 1,015. Buimo reflects what many other prisons throughout the country are facing. Overcrowding has also been one of the biggest triggers of prison breakouts in Papua New Guinea's major prisons.
High numbers of detainees in correctional institutions compared to limited body space per dormitories, poor living conditions for officers, detainees, low budget allocation.
Today, Commissioner Waipo tried looking at the positives, the solutions that will hopefully improve containment for juveniles and rehabilitation. But in reality, the Correctional Service remains one of the most underfunded government agencies that is expected to produce stellar results every year. Lucy Kopana, National EMTV News, Lae.
You're watching the news on your number one to watch. We take a look at stories making headlines overseas. When we come back, stay tuned. Welcome back to the news. Turning overseas, New Zealand firefighters are now on the front lines of California's most devastating wildfire season. Their deployment is vital and many U.S. crews are working 24-hour shifts in life-threatening conditions. And they're at breaking point, battling 17 major blazes across the state before the peak fire season has even hit.
Apocalyptic scenes in California, Mother Nature unleashed. The Mendocino complex fire, the largest in state history, is barely a third contained.
Everything is on a 100 times scale. A big fire in New Zealand would be 50, 60,000 hectares. This thing is massive.
Kiwi firefighters were out in the field for the first time today, joining 14,000 Americans battling the wildfires raging across the state.
Firefighters stick together, and look, we've had American use out in New Zealand for the Christchurch earthquakes, the Kaikoura earthquake.
40 New Zealanders are deployed here, and this is the kind of thing they're up against. New tornadoes of fire, terrifying and untamed. Ironically, the plumes of smoke are so thick they're blocking out the sun, bringing temperatures down on the ground and slowing the fire spread down. It's an opportunity for crews to get in.
Now we have members coming from New Zealand and Australia. We absolutely cherish the help. We thank you so much in this time of need.
12 more New Zealanders are at the car fire to the north, which has taken 7 lives and destroyed more than 1,000 homes.
Just blew me away this morning when I was driving up to the fire ground, when I saw all these houses destroyed, and it was quite emotional when I saw it.
Resources here are stretched, locals overjoyed to see the Kiwis.
It's been amazing. Everyone's coming up, shaking your hands, all over you, pretty much, yeah.
And today they got a taste of what's to come.
We had a breakout and there was flames about probably 100 metres high, and it was all on there for a minute.
There's disbelief that at least one fire may have been deliberately lit, the Holy Fire, which is scorching Southern California.
This shouldn't be called the Holy Gym Fire, this should be called the Holy Hellfire.
Police have arrested 51-year-old local Forrest Clark, who allegedly emailed the fire chief saying this place will burn. More than 2,000 properties are gone, 20,000 residents grabbed what they could and ran.
Everything just seems kind of surreal, you know. It's just last couple of days it really started settling in.
A state in chaos, but grateful for help from some international friends.
New Zealand is not prepared for a global pandemic. That warning from experts who also say the country needs to be able to close its borders quickly when one hits. They're calling for new laws to be put in place despite the cost of the economy.
It's inspired plenty of movies.
On day one, there were 2 people, and then 4, and then 16. In 3 months, it's 1 billion. That's where we're headed.
But serious global pandemics aren't just fiction.
We could have pandemic influenza again. We could have something like SARS that is perhaps more infectious and spreads globally. Or we could have a new bioweapon, for example.
Researchers have been studying the benefits of closing New Zealand's borders against the consequences such as loss of tourism. They found hundreds of lives could be saved and the positives outweigh the negatives.
There are also huge economic benefits to New Zealand by doing this, of 8 billion to 144 billion.
The Ministry of Health says it does have a pandemic plan which considers different border options. But experts say there needs to be specific legislation to allow authorities to shut the doors immediately within a day.
At the start of a pandemic, in the early days, we generally don't know how severe it is. At that point, you need to act. If you wait and do nothing in the early days, it's too late.
And Nikki Turner says closing the border is no easy task.
The world is interconnected, so it's a huge challenge to consider exactly how you would effectively shut the borders.
A challenge experts say is worth thinking about now.
It's figuring us out faster than we're figuring it out.
Australia is claiming a clean energy breakthrough that could shape the future of hydrogen-powered vehicles. Scientists have found a way to safely transport the highly flammable element, a move hailed as game-changing.
Cruising Queensland's streets, 2 cars powered by hydrogen. The benefits well known.
They're quiet and they emit nothing but water.
But these are different, a world first. They're running on hydrogen that's been stored and shipped in ammonia before being converted back again. It's an answer to one of the volatile fuel's major roadblocks, safe bulk transportation over long distances.
It's 100% selective, so we get a pure product, which is exactly what these cars need.
The technology has been developed by Australian scientists over the last decade. It's being called a game changer.
Here in Australia, it presents a major commercial opportunity, given it's a country rich in renewable energy sources like sunlight and wind, which can be used to manufacture the hydrogen.
A number of countries are reportedly expressing interest already, including Japan, which wants to become a hydrogen society. But building the number of high-tech fuelling stations needed is costly, and they've run into production problems.
Australia could certainly be a renewable energy export superpower. There's no doubt about that.
Hydrogen's an area our government signalled an interest in as well. Last month, it announced a $950,000 investment in a Taranaki company with an eye to developing infrastructure that could eventually see the country's heavy transport fleet run on it. Back in Australia, hydrogen-powered cars could be on sale in the next 2 years.
They can fill up in 3 minutes, just like a normal car, and they've got 800 kilometres of range.
While the price tag between $60,000 and $90,000 is predicted to fall. They've been carefully reared and kept in breeding programs, and now a flock of one of New Zealand's most threatened native birds is ready for the wild. 184 young khaki all-black stilts are being released in the Mackenzie Basin.
These crates, the most precious of cargo.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
The doors opening to the vast expanse of the Mackenzie Basin, and the khaki don't hesitate for a moment.
Oh my gosh, it was fantastic.
One of New Zealand's most threatened birds embracing freedom at the top of Lake Tekapo.
This is what it's about. This is where they should be.
The species got down to just 23 birds in the 80s. Now there are 132 adults in the wild.
Numbers are increasing and maybe this is, turning a corner.
The khaki released today were nurtured here at the Isaac Wildlife and Conservation Trust in Christchurch.
Are they easy to work with?
Wee bit delicate, easily break legs and bills.
They had rigorous checks to make sure they were ready for the real world.
Just to make sure that they're at a good weight for release into the wild.
The team charged with raising them, their biggest fans.
They're quite quirky little birds, and yeah, they're quite entertaining.
And say they need to be treated with just as much importance as the kia, kakapo and kiwi.
We have a responsibility as a nation to help protect all the birds, not just the charismatic ones.
As the little fledglings took to the sky, some of those who helped raise them in the aviary looked on with pride.
So it's like your kid going off out into the workforce, essentially. So yeah, no, it's a really cool experience.
Now the birds have been released, they won't be left to their own devices. They'll have plates of food like this left out for them over the next 6 weeks.
It's hoped 50% of these little red-legged birds will survive to help bring their species back from the brink.
You're with Thursday's news. Stay tuned for some sporting updates in Chukai Sports coming up next.
Two
Trukai Sports.
Welcome to Trukai Sports. Players and officials participating in the 2018 Northern Zone Confederation trials have started arriving in Wewak East Sepik Province. The trials set to kick off tomorrow will see players from Wau and Bulolo in the Morbe Province, Ramu in Madang and Kainantu in Eastern Highlands. It will run for 3 days and selected players will represent Northern Zone in the September competition here in Port Moresby. The rest of the team is expected to arrive in Wewak tomorrow. Now, it's been almost a week since the Crusaders claimed their super title, but rugby fever still remains in Christchurch City with tomorrow's All Blacks training game sold out. Players with a chance to impress the AB's coaches ahead of the first Bledisloe test in Sydney, including one man returning from injury.
Ardie Savea isn't usually this popular when the Hurricanes come to town.
I guess a part of being an All Black, we park the Super Rugby teams up and we come together as one, and we have to do that quite quickly because we've got the first Bledisloe next week.
Trading yellow for black was the first job done. The next is proving to Steve Hansen that he's match ready after declaring himself pain-free.
I think I'm ready to go, so hopefully get through training and hopefully get a good bit of game time tomorrow night, so see how that goes.
And it's certainly not Savea's ability that will stop him from running out in black in Sydney.
Yeah, doesn't have a lot to prove to us in terms of his form. He's just got a lot to prove in terms, just got to convince himself that he's back.
So while there's no question that Sam Cane will be starting at 7, the competition for the bench spots and blindside flanker couldn't be higher. Lucy's Shannon Frizzell and Jackson Hemipo are certainly contenders after impressing on debut.
The likes of the names you mentioned all have a chance to go out there and do what they do within our game plan and push their case.
And it's amazing how much talent that was left out of the squad, and we're pretty blessed to have that.
With tomorrow's game of 3 halves likely to provide a clearer picture.
There's a number of guys that we need to see have a good hit out who haven't played for a little while, so that's one box we've got to tick and see how everyone shapes up after the campaigns they've had.
Which should hopefully help the All Blacks tick the first box and getting one hand back on the Bledisloe.
Trukai Sports continues with more after these messages. Stay tuned.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome back to Trukai Sports. To netball now. Leeson Grant has one last opportunity to showcase her skills in leadership before Tuesday, with the Pulse set to meet the Southern Steel in Sunday's Premiership Grand Final. The Tactics are coming to final pressure, bringing to an end their best ever campaign, while the Southern Steel brace for the chance to give retiring skipper Wendy Frew the dream send-off.
16 years, 175 games for her beloved Southland franchise. Fans jammed into Invercargill's Wendy Frew Stadium to see their favourite daughter play at home one last time.
There's been a wee bit of hype around. I don't like attention on me, so try to stay humble, and obviously it's a big honour, but I really wanted to focus on getting the win for the girls and putting in a solid performance.
The Steel looked the better side in the opening quarter, but a surge in the second gave the Tactics a slight edge heading into half-time.
This is a big shot from Beveridge. Beautiful.
With the third quarter a draw, it all came down to who could withstand the pressure moments. The Southerners showing their steel, the Tactics left to ruminate 2 critical moments in the final minutes. The Tactics eliminated but should stand proud. After a decade in the doldrums, they rose above all expectations, setting new club records. A position the Steel now find themselves in, with a chance to claim back-to-back titles.
Just recharge the batteries, get a head in the right space and head up to Palmy on Saturday for a big weekend.
No matter what happens in Sunday's grand final, 33-year-old Frew will always be a local legend.
For over a decade, Mahé Drysdale has been competing at the top level in the men's singles scull. But at the next month's World Championships, that's all going to change. The Olympic champion has been named in the men's quad and is quickly having to get used to working with crewmates again.
It was fitting that for today's team announcement, Mahé Drysdale was sitting on his own. Since 2005, he's rowed on his own, but no more.
Men's quad,
Mahi Drysdale.
It's been also a bit of an adjustment for me, going from, setting my own rhythm, being my own man, and you've got to fit in with a crew, and I've been very much the one that's had to make some changes.
After failing to win the singles spot for next month's World Championships, Drysdale decided to put his hand up for another crew. He spent 3 weeks trialling for the quadruple scull, and he's probably earned a treat or two. He's now the lightest he's been since the Beijing Olympics. Part of Rowing New Zealand's trial process is the notoriously brutal seat racing here on Lake Karapiro. Athletes row the 2-kilometre race course again and again in different combinations to see which one's the fastest. It's something Drysdale hasn't had to do in 14 years.
You know your spot's on the line, so mentally and physically it's pretty tough on the body, and doing repeats and repeats and repeats.
It's his mental toughness that most excites his new coach. Mike Roger worked with Rob Waddell during the duo's 2008 showdown for the single seat.
He's amazing under pressure. He brings something special every time. So we're going to pick his brains and bleed from him as much as we can when it comes to that.
At the last Elite World Cup, the quad missed out on the A final. It's hoped Drysdale can push them into medal contention.
What we've seen so far, or felt within the boat, I'd say is no secret. He's definitely a big, strong guy, and you can feel that horsepower in there. So I guess the challenge for us moving forward is to link that into something we can all work with.
They have just a month to get 3 + 1 to equal a quad.
And that ends Shukai Sports. Up next, the weather details for the next 24 hours.
Shukai Sports. Shukai Sports.
The weather details were proudly brought to you by Dulux, celebrating 50 years in PNG and the only paint made in PNG.
Looking at the weather forecast for this afternoon and tonight, in the southern region, mostly fine in Port Moresby, Daru, Kerema, Alotau and Popondetta. In the Mamasi region, mostly fine in Lae and Wewak, partly cloudy in Vanimo and Madang, and fine becoming cloudy in Wau. In the New Guinea Islands region, partly cloudy in Lorengau, Kavieng and Kimbe, cloudy showers in Buka, and mostly fine in Kokopo and Rabaul. And in the Highlands region, fog, morning fog and some clouds in Mount Hagen, fine weather becoming cloudy in Goroka, Kundiawa, Mendi and Wabeg. Forecast for small ships for the next 24 hours, waters of southern PNG-Indonesian border through Torres Strait and Daru to Kiwai Island and Kerema to Yule Island, Hood Point to Samarai Island with waters of Manus and its western group of islands, seas of 1.5 to 2.5 meters. Waters of eastern and western Milne Bay Islands and with waters of Samarai Island to Cape Vogel to Finchhafen, seas of 1 to 2 meters. Waters of Finchhafen through Vitiaz and Dampier Straits to Siasi Islands and Long Island with waters of West New Britain, seas of 2 to 3 meters. Waters of Long Island to Madang and Bogia to Wewak with Aitape to Vanimo, northern PNG Indonesian border, seas of 0.5 to 1.3 meters. Waters of East New Britain to New Island and Bougainville, seas of 1.5 to 2 meters. Ocean forecast for PNG areas in the Coral Sea, seas rough with southeast winds at 20 to 33 knots. In the Solomon Sea, seas rather rough with southeast winds at 20 to 25 knots with gusts. In the Bismarck Sea, seas rough to very rough with southeast winds at 25 to 34 knots. And in the Pacific Ocean, seas slight to moderate with southeast winds at 15 to 20 knots.
The weather details were proudly brought to you by Dulux, celebrating 50 years in PNG and the only paint made in PNG.
And before we go, recapping our main stories. Second round of polio vaccinations to include Highlands provinces, country to see faster internet speeds by February 2019, and Beon Corrections Facility hosting double its capacity. And that's the news, sport and weather for today, Thursday, the 9th of August 2018. On behalf of the entire EMTV news team around the country, pleasant viewing for the rest of the evening and good night.